Van Sampson,
Curtis M. Lawson,
Paul Christian Glenn, Joshua Rex, Raz, Rob Smale,
Normally you would see Delphine's face up here, but today I am your Uncle Necro, and I'm welcoming today a friend of mine from back when, a writer, essayist, teacher, wife, mother, antique typewriter enthusiast, Sarah K Lenz, who is the author of What Will Outlast Me, a collection of her essays that was just released. So, hello.
Hi.
So, with me also is Delphine, because without her, I would not know exactly what I would be doing. So say hello, Del.
Hey everybody, I'm the squirrel behind the keyboard tonight, just hanging out here. Pleased to meet Sarah and really excited. We've got some great stuff coming up tonight because I've got to read some of her stuff. Hey Jenny, nice to see you visiting. And one thing, folks, I keep pushing the wrong button. Do make sure when you're watching to comment. We'll just keep that up. But there will be drawings for free copies of the book towards the end of the show. So, what's everybody been up to today?
Well,
how are we doing?
Well, it's been an adventure watching my friend's 6-year-old. He can't wait to go back home tomorrow, but he also asked me, when can I see you again, which gives anybody the feels.
That's
also he's been watching a whole mess of the Teen Titans Go TV show, so that's keeping him quiet.
I haven't seen Teen Titans Go. I've seen the old Teen Titans. How is the Go version?
I prefer the old version simply because I'm an adult that likes the animated style. This one is clearly geared more for kids, but the jokes, once you stick with it, the jokes are actually pretty darn funny. I will give it that.
Okay, cool.
So,
Sarah?
So at my house, we watch Bluey. So I also have a 6-year-old. My son Stanley, who I write about in the book, he is really obsessed with Bluey because this week new episodes were launched in season 3. So it's super accurate, even though the parent-kid dynamic are cartoon dogs. But I highly recommend Bluey. So next time you're with your 6-year-old,
all right,
nice.
Give me some try.
I'm gonna show you guys real quick. I got to go out with Mom today, and we got to take Peanut, her pup, out. And this is Peanut, and she loves going on rides. She used to be so scared, but we got her this car seat from Chewy, and she absolutely loves it. And so now whenever we go anywhere, she's like, I'm going for a ride. I'm going for a ride. You stand up to go to the bathroom. Let's go for a ride. Come on. We're going to go for a ride. And that dog just goes crazy over it because it's a booster in the back and it goes under the seatbelt, just slips through the thing. But she's up high enough and there's a little cushion in it that rather than sitting down in the seat, especially since she's a small dog, she's up high enough so that she can actually see out the window.
I mean, I want one of those my size. I mean, that looks like so comfy and like cushy.
And she shares it with her cousin sometimes. My sister's dog she just sits in the back seat, or she was just sitting in the back seat, but then she went ahead and got to share the car seat with Peanut at one point, and they both fit, and they were both able to like back and forth, stick their noses out. And it has a little lead on it that you can lock on, and so we had to go ahead and then buy her cousin one as well. So. Jenny.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, Jenny prefers the original Teen Titans as well as My Tiny Monsters, and Jenny has a bunch of little ones. So,
yeah. So let's see, Sarah. I've known her for a while now. Since what, 99 was it when we first met? Yeah. Even then, you were really into publishing your own stuff, and I've contributed a little bit to that. But then life happened. So it's saying here, see, your nonfiction has appeared in numerous literary journals, and 3 of your essays have been named notable in Best American Essays, and you received the New Letters Readers Award in nonfiction. What got you into just going the essay route?
That's a great question. Yeah, because I was, back when you met me, I think I was writing a lot of fiction actually. And I actually have a bachelor's in fiction writing, and then I stopped writing fiction. And I'm not sure.
Real life is a lot more weird.
It is weird, right? I think I came to nonfiction sort of accidentally. So after I finished my BFA in fiction writing, I went on to get a master's in English at Boise State. And it was there that I was mostly just reading a lot of literary theory, a lot of philosophy. I was doing a lot of archival research. I was reading a woman's collected diaries and letters who was a novelist in Idaho. Her name was Clara Spiegel. I wrote my thesis on her. And I also, at the time, broke grad student, was waiting tables at a fine dining restaurant. And the people that I worked with, it was kind of like The Bear. Are you guys watching? Did you guys watch that show?
Sorry.
No.
I've been told I have to, so I'm going to binge it with my mother because it's something I think she would like to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of television that I'm told I should watch, but if I start something, I need to binge all of it.
Right.
Like she told me all about, like Dell told me all about Lucifer. So I tried the first show, and then all of a sudden I lose like 3 weeks of my life.
And he's seen more of it than I have now.
Yeah. So.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So The Bear, it's great. It's very accurate as to what goes on in a fine dining restaurant. And when that restaurant folded and that job ended, I had like this vacuum. I suddenly was missing people that were really passionate about food, that really cared about cooking and ingredients. And I mean, I hate the term foodie, but I really became a foodie. And at that time, I also started writing about food, and I had a blog. And so I was writing all these little essays that were kind of like diary entries, talking about, what I was growing in my garden, what I was cooking, and just kind of my life. And that really honed my ability to, find inspiration from the mundane parts of my life, but also to describe things and to use language in creative ways. And then it was a few years after that, I was teaching a lot of freshman composition, English 1301, English 101, right? The academic writing class everyone has to take. And in that class, you focus a lot on teaching the essay form and teaching a research essay and teaching personal narratives. And so the more I was teaching that type of writing, the more I was writing it on my own. And then in 2012, my husband graduated with his PhD in English. And I said, okay, my turn to go back to grad school. And I decided I wanted to do an MFA. And that's when I concentrated primarily on the essay form, on writing creative nonfiction. And I was able to study creative nonfiction writing for 3 years when I was at Georgia College. And that's where I was when I started the book.
Okay. That's kind of leads me into my next question here. Because it's saying here where while you were at Georgia College, your claim to fame was she once held Flannery O'Connor's bra while working as a student curator at the museum.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's true. And not just her bra, but also her girdle.
Okay.
If you were wondering.
Yeah. You're trying to feed off the vibes, maybe. Come on, bring me the Southern Gothic.
Yeah.
Kind of, show me the ugliness.
We have a prior guest that would be really into that. Joshua, well, that sounds terrible. No, Joshua Rex, who we had on before, I've had a bunch of folks up from Providence on. And he is an author, a musician, and a historian. And he does like the clothing set the designs for when they have the clothing setups in museums and stuff. And so he's written stories too about like this whole thing where it was all about it was a fictional story, but it was based on an actual exhibit that they were making and different clothes that they had found there. And so that's very cool, like to be able to have that part of history.
Yeah. So, Flannery O'Connor was from Milledgeville, Georgia, and that's where I lived, and that's where Georgia College is from. And it was her alma mater. That's where she went as an undergrad when it was a women's only school. And her family ran a dairy farm, which she called Andalusia Farm. And so Andalusia Farm right now is a historic, landmark home museum. And so the house where she wrote her major novels after she came back from Iowa has been restored as a museum. And it's just a lovely property. It's beautiful. And so when I was at Georgia College, I was able to do like an independent study. And so I just worked at the museum with a co-curator, and my job was to go through all the linens and fabrics and textiles that they had in the museum collection, which hadn't been properly preserved. So a lot of it was just like unboxing things and going through drawers and chiffon robes. And it was incredibly tedious, and in the deep South in a non-air conditioned house, and taking a tiny vacuum and like vacuuming the clothes. But one day I was unpacking to catalog the chiffon robe, and I hold up a bra, and lo and behold, it's Flannery O'Connor's bra. And then I hold up another dress, and it's a dress that I actually recognized from a famous interview that she did with the New York Times, and we were able to compare the pictures. And that was like my eureka moment. I was like, aha, this is the same dress. And so that became kind of the centerpiece of the exhibit that I curated. So it was a lot of fun. And I got to work with Bruce Gentry, who's like one of the preeminent Flannery O'Connor scholars. And, Flannery is just brilliant. Her short fiction and the way her stories can be interpreted so subtly in so many different ways is just absolutely brilliant. So, big fan of Flannery.
That is very awesome.
Everyone should read her works. At least get a good collection of her short stories. Yes. Dig into that. So
yeah. I will say I think her short fiction is better than her novels, but I mean, Wise Blood still kind of gives me chill bumps sometimes when I think about how it ends.
Yeah. So my next question, and we kind of share the same interest in this, is when did you start curating your own fascination for the antique typewriters? I'm seeing right behind you. There's a couple.
I was thinking about that too.
And I remember you posting something about that in either one of your blogs or it was a Facebook post a few years ago.
Yeah, it was my author newsletter. I posted an article called Typewriter Tinkerer. I got into typewriters completely by accident. So I used to run a literary arts education center called Writer's Studio, and it started here just locally in Corpus Christi, Texas, where I'm based. And then during the pandemic, we went online, and I kind of had this just writing community. And one of the members of Writer's Studio, a man named David Carpenter, contacted me, and he said, hey, I have a bunch of art supplies that were my mother's. Would you want them? And I was like, yes, that'd be awesome. His parents had died, and he was cleaning out the family home. And so I go over there to get art supplies, and he's also like, oh, I have these 2 typewriters. You wouldn't want these, would you? I just think I'm going to throw them out. And I was like, don't throw out the typewriters. Sure, I'll take them. But I didn't have any plan or want or need for a typewriter. I didn't even know what I was going to do with them. And so they just kind of sat in my closet for a few months. And then my church was holding a fall festival, like kind of like a carnival, kind of like Day of the Dead thing, which is, really big in South Texas. And they wanted people to have like booths, like it was a carnival. And I was like, what could I do? And I thought, I could do typewriter rodeo, which is a Texas thing. So the NPR stations here in Texas have a segment called Typewriter Rodeo. And it's a group of poets in Austin, Texas, that just go to public places and write poems on demand it's like you're busking with a typewriter, and people from the crowd give you a topic, or they request a poem about something, and then you type it on the spot. So I thought, okay, we're going to do that. And so I got a bunch of my poet friends to help out. And while I was like, getting new ribbons and getting the typewriters from David ready, I found another couple typewriters on Facebook Marketplace. And so I snatched those up. And now, in the last week, 2 strangers have just given me typewriters that are in like rough shape because they think I can refurbish them. I now have 14 typewriters in my possession.
Wow.
And I do type-ins. So I'll take 10 typewriters to the public library and just welcome people to type whatever they want on them. And I bring cool stationery and people write whatever they want. We're going to do more typewriter rodeos, but I love the typewriters because they're so tactile. So we spend so much time in front of screens and devices. And I realized that if I was going to write as much as I possibly could, I needed to find ways to write that were fun and got me away from the computer. And so this is like floor to ceiling. I have 6 typewriters here that they're in good working order and whatever mood I'm in, because they all feel different. I'll grab one and go to my standing desk and click clack, and it takes perfectionism away from you too, because you mess up and you're like, oh, well, I just got to keep going. And so it changes my voice as a writer in a really good way. And I just think every writer should have a typewriter just for the fun of it.
I can't get to mine right now. It's somewhere back in the spare room. That it's kind of like trying to get to Narnia if you try to wander. Only there's obstacles.
It really is. It really is. It's a lot better now.
It is.
But you were mentioning that, and for we do white elephant gifts for a family because our family has gotten so huge over the past couple of years that it's just impossible to get everybody together and try to buy presents for, all the different kids and stuff. And one of my family members works at a place where they like sell office supplies and set up offices for people. They'll come in and say like, I need this, and they'll, oh, how about if we lay it out like this and give you these things? And they have a basement, and there's contribution to the white elephant this year was one of the, like, it looks like a briefcase and then it opens up to be a typewriter, a very old fashioned one.
Nice.
And apparently they're like, yeah, just in the basement we have all this really, really old office stuff, and there's like 10 of those and just a ton of other old typewriters laying around. So I will have to check in and see if they can get you one of those like briefcase typewriters. That would be a cool thing.
And how does one become a part of your family for one of these?
You don't.
Oh.
Nobody's looking right now. So
you can't very into it.
Okay. Okay, so you have the essay you were going to read for us tonight. But before we get to that, I do want to point out something really, really cool that you did over the COVID season. And that is I believe, the writer studio that you set up. Why don't you tell us about that?
Okay, let's see where to start. I'm just like, I don't want to get. Do I do the long version, the medium version, the short version? Okay, so when I was at Georgia, working on my MFA, it was kind of this. It was brilliant because it was a small program in a small town, and so the 10 women that were in my writing cohort, we became really, really close, and I was just surrounded by really lovely people who were talented writers who read a lot and who wrote a lot and wanted to talk only about reading and writing. And they were my people. And then my husband gets a job in Corpus Christi, Texas, which I never thought I would, in a million years, I would be a Texan or that I would live on the coast. And it's so weird that I'm in this like tropical climate and that the beach is, just like a 20-minute walk that way. But when I got to Corpus, I was just incredibly lonely and incredibly just like, homesick for my people. Right. And I tried out some groups. There was a really active NaNoWriMo group in Corpus, and I met a lot of great friends from there. And they did critiques, and there were a lot of open mics. And I was like, what I'm missing is really serious study of the craft of writing, of like looking at a piece of writing and saying, why does this work? And also writing together with people, generating writing, and just feeling in it and being a community, being a creative community. And so I hatched the idea to do Writer Studio, and the goal was to bring together writers in their craft. And so we would just do monthly classes that were part generative, doing prompts, doing like almost like running your scales, or doing sketches if you were an artist, a visual artist, and got a lot of volunteer teachers, and it was a blast. So that was Writer Studio. Yeah. So
Very cool.
Yeah, that does sound a bit familiar, though, doesn't it, Del? A community of writers getting together to talk
Writing
about
right.
Mm.
There's a Discord community that Raz, who's not here with us right now, but he got me to join it, and we were both moderators. I still am. He's not there right now, but it's called Right, and it was kind of initially based off of authors who mostly were publishing things on Reddit, but it also grew to include more, and it's still going. But yeah, it's a nice community to share all that kind of stuff with, and it is very nice to have other authors when you're like, I'm ripping out my hair because I don't know what to do here. Can somebody just look this over and give me another perspective on how to get from here to here, because it's not working.
So, all right. So, the book that is the reason why you're here. What Will Outlast Me? Let's see. Have you talked with anyone in the Houston Writers Guild?
I have not. So it's it's anywhere between a 4.5 to 6.5 hour drive from where I'm at to Houston, depending on traffic, right? Because Houston traffic is pretty bad. I did go to a writing conference in Houston in 2016. But yeah, Houston has a great literary scene. And Gulf Coast Magazine is out of University of Houston. They have a wonderful PhD creative writing program. Houston's amazing.
See, my understanding is that Houston is about an hour away from Houston.
Yes.
So,
yes. On a turnpike, on toll roads only. Yes.
right. So, let's see. What Will Outlast Me? The collection that you just published. Let's see. It was inspired by the post-mortem photo.
Yeah,
Did you bring that up?
Yep.
How did you come about this?
So my dad gave me this photo. I was living in Georgia at the time, and I was visiting him in Nebraska, and he was, going through the downsizing, decluttering stage of his life. And he said, here, I want you to have this. You're the family historian. This should be yours. And my first thought is like, oh, that's gross. I don't want, no. And then I also found myself like gaping at it and staring and being like, this is so fascinating. So actually and I started writing about it almost immediately, but I think what I want to do, can you put the photo up again? And I want to read an excerpt.
Yeah.
That opens.
Okay.
The lightning flowers.
Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
A trio of open caskets is propped on wooden straight-back chairs. The open lids of each white coffin reveal a square peephole framing the face and torso of 3 dead bodies. On top of the caskets, shiny placards read an ornate scroll, "At rest." Like all corpses laid out for funeral rites, the 3 boys exude a certain peacefulness due to the careful closing of their eyes and mouth, what morticians call setting the features. The dead brothers wear matching dark suits and black bow ties. Their dark hair is slicked back from their foreheads. Carnations rest on their chest near clasped hands. Edgar Allan Poe in triplicate, I think. But I can't tell if it's the hair, the dark suits, or the morbid situation that brings this to mind. In the background, a ladder-shaped shadow that the wooden chairs make and the white curtains of the parlor take on the blur of an apparition. In the foreground, the bottoms of the caskets are cropped out of the photo, as if the slightest stirring, each casket could slip, topple to the ground, and spill its contents. So I'll stop right there.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It wasn't until you pointed it out that I realized that those are at a slant. Sitting down. I'm kind of morbid, so I was born on Halloween. That's my excuse for it. But you mentioned Memento Mori, and this was your first experience with it, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I've always been fascinated with. It's just like,
I can't say
terrible, but
I can't say I've ever found any from my family yet, but I'm sure it's a thing because that was kind of the thing back in like Victorian times.
Yeah, that photo was taken in 1914.
Okay.
And it turns out that I actually do have more postmortem family photos, like one of several snapshots of my maternal grandfather. But you asked me earlier why essay, and I think one of the reasons I fell in love with the essay form is because it allows you to kind of be a sleuth, to kind of ask a lot of questions and do a lot of research. And so, the book What Will Outlast Me started with that photo, and it was that just terrible feeling of I'm repulsed and attracted to this photo at the same time. It makes my stomach feel funny. What is going on? Why is that? And what's causing that? And so I went in search of answers. And it led me to some surprising places. One thing that I did was I contacted a photography professor that I had and took the photo into him to see if he could help me. And we did some research. And so I'm going to read another little chunk to kind of explain these antique postmortems. And Gil is the professor. And so we're at the research library where he worked. Gil took out his loo. Yep, they're roughed up quite good. I looked through the magnifying lens and saw burn marks splayed across the boy's chin. A deep gash cuts across the lip of the oldest boy. They probably aren't cuts at all, but lightning flowers or Lichtenberg figures named after the German physicist who in 1777 studied the patterns high voltage static electricity made. When a current of lightning passes through the skin, capillaries rupture and bloom into firm-like burns underneath. Like tributaries, they mark the flow of the stream, a heart-stopping volt of electricity. How did you say they were killed? Gil asked. They were getting the horses in from the storm when they were struck by lightning. They were all killed instantly, and the barn burnt to the ground. Gil left me to look at the Sleeping Beauties. And I should say here, Sleeping Beauties is the name of basically a coffee table book that is reproductions of postmortem Memento Mori photos. And so it's just a bunch of antique memory photographs of dead people. It's really creepy. As I turned the pages, I noticed each photo had something that caught my eye, and that, like the burned faces of my great uncles, made me uneasy. In Mother Holds Her Daughter with Rigor Mortis While Father Mourns, 1846, it was the awkward, rigidly straight arms of the dead girl. In Child Dead from Dehydration Due to Intestinal Disease, 1854, it was the child's sunken cheeks, contrasted with her bulbous skeletal head. In Charlie, A Boy Playing with His Toys, 1850, it was the deceased's half-open eyes, gazing longingly at the wagon he'll never play with again. French theorist Roland Barthes has a word for details like this: punctum. Like the period under an exclamation point, a sharp needle prick the hole an arrow makes, or the spot where lightning strikes. Punctum is a detail that attracts or distresses the viewer. The punctum can arouse sympathy or a flash of insight. Barthes explains in Camera Lucida, however lightning-like it may be, the punctum has a power of expansion. This power is often metonymic. For Barthes, photographs could transcend themselves, becoming no longer the medium, the stand-in representing reality, but reality itself. He asks, is this not the sole proof of its art? Like reference to Madonna and Child, the mothers in these antique postmortem photographs cradle their dead children. But unlike Da Vinci or Raphael Madonnas with beatific expressions, these mothers are stoic. In the daguerreotype of mother holding her dead child, 1855, the woman meets the gaze of the camera straight on, jaw set firm, as if her stony countenance could prevent an emotional breakdown. And so the other thing, I'm going to stop right there, and then I have one more little chunk that I'll read, is when I'm working on an essay and it's about my life and I'm drawing in research, there's also weird juxtapositions or connections that happen. And so it just so happened that the day my dad gave me that photograph, I drove to Lincoln, Nebraska to visit my cousin Erin. And the year prior to that, Erin had had a premature baby who had died after he lived for 5 or 6 months, on life support in the NICU the entire time. And when I was visiting with her, she wanted to show me the pictures of her baby Aiden and the remembrance, the very modern remembrance photos that they took of him after his death. And it was this incredible coincidental colliding then that led me to really, start thinking and wondering about the purpose of these photos and how important and valuable they are. And so I'm going to read this last section. Erin's pictures with Aiden are different. In the photo that haunts me the most, Erin holds Aiden in an upright position, sitting on her lap facing her, so his back is turned to the camera. For a minute, it's easy to believe he's a normal infant because the tubes that spider across his face, enter his rosebud mouth, and snake down his tiny nose aren't in sight. The punctum is Erin's eyes. They are full of tears. The pain in her red-rimmed eyes seems so private that I had gasped the first time I saw it. What? Erin had asked. In that moment, I felt like I crossed a boundary, overstepped a line of decency. This is I hadn't known what to say. It feels, then I managed to tell her, somehow this picture snatches your emotions. Don't you feel like this photo violates your privacy? That was the day Erin said, we took Aiden off life support. I love that picture because I loved the back of his little head and wanted a picture of it. Erin is deeply religious. I realize that gives her strength. She is certain Aiden is in heaven waiting for the rest of the family to join him. I'm awed by her nonchalance. She's had several years to process this grief, but even so, I'm struck by her unselflessness. She's given the viewer a gift, raw emotion. This snapshot is the antithesis of a Kodak moment. It documents not a birthday party or wedding, the sort of event that we normally want to relive in memory, but a point in time no one would ever want to go through once, let alone again in memory. This photo of Erin's face contorted in sorrow allows viewers to experience, at a deeply personal level, a horror not their own. Kafka said, we photograph things in order to drive them out of our minds. If he is right, postmortem photographs are a way of shelving grief so we don't have to confront it again and again. Having trapped the gruesome face of death, relegated it to a closed photo album, pain fades. The emulsion of chemicals on light-sensitive paper remembers, so we don't have to.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. I I love the essays that I've read of yours, and that's just so I've seen a lot of the different books and stuff like that, and I slightly off topic, the one that gets to me, um, and this might be because of this, is how the collecting of hair that they used to do back in the day and turn
Yeah.
it into ornaments and such.
Yes.
I've I sent someone a 3 foot long braid, one of my ex significant others, and so it was like, just in case, you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you know he's not just building like an effigy of you and just, I don't know, summoning the dead?
Oh, there's
It
always the
happens,
chance.
right?
It, if it happens, I got the voodoo doll. I'm fine.
You think she's joking. Anyway, I've been there, I've seen it. Um, anyway, so right, fascinating stuff. I got to tell you, I feel honored to have known you early on with your enthusiasm for writing. It's part of what kept me in the writing too. Kind of. I do have a question, and we all have the different answers for this. It's your standard. I'm not going to say how do you write because usually I answer with one word at a time. But do you take? I guess who are your top picks for inspirations as far as your writing style? You mentioned um, Con, Connery O'Flanner.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a really, really hard question.
Okay.
Because I really don't want to take from anybody else's style, right? I want to try to
Right.
find my own unique one. And I just finished teaching a creative writing class for 5 weeks that was just talking about like finding voice. But I can't speak to your question of inspiration, and then I'll maybe circle back
Okay.
that this world is so fascinating, and that if you start paying attention to it and asking questions and researching and reading things, you're gonna find some amazing things. And when I was first starting out writing What Will Outlast Me, and I was, on this, why do postmortem photographs freak me out? Why do photographs have power? Oh, why is it photos where death is brushing near that is interesting? Okay, so when death brushes near, why do I feel more alive? Like, what's that all about? And so I was reading a lot of theory and a lot of kind of some dry nonfiction, some philosophy, I really try to read as much as I can about a particular topic, really wide and deep. But I had a hunch you'd ask me something like this, and I had to pull out this book
Oh,
called
I'm big in that.
Everyone Loves a Good Train Wreck, Why We Can't Look Away. And so, these, you can see all of my like fan of post-it notes and dog ears, but a lot of the ideas in this book and concepts that he was exploring with his own stories would trigger a spark of inspiration for me. So he talks about like the proximity to the train wreck, right? If you're close enough to view the horror of it, you're sort of riveted. If you're too close, you're terrified. And if you're too far away from the train wreck, well, you scroll through it on your phone, right? And you don't think anything of it. And so I was thinking about proximity to things and to wrecks and to accidents. And so then I started delving those memories, like a time that I had a close call with a car accident, the time I witnessed police shoot and kill a Black man in the yard across the street from my apartment, times when I had passed a bad car accident, and had totally rubbernecked. And so then I started thinking about rubbernecking. So it's more about ideas. But that said, and then I want to like go back to the wall of books and be like, okay, like what is indispensable, or like who are some of the best American essayists right now that I just adore? I'll give you 3 names because I'm teaching an essay form class in the fall. Ross Gay, his new book Inciting Joy is just like, oh, it's so amazing, and I love the way he writes, and he just blows me away. His talent, his craft. Eula Biss, her thinking on the page is just brilliant. She's been a National Book Award finalist, and rightfully so. She's amazing. And then my third one is kind of an outlier, would be Amy Fusselman, because she writes in such experimental braided ways and the way she weaves story together. So those are my top 3 American essayists right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to pull up a comment real quick from what you were talking about before. Jenny says, I feel that in my soul. My aunt was adamant that I have postmortem pictures of my mom and grandma. Those are hid away with all the other family pictures.
Yeah.
And we have pictures of like caskets in my family too, which even if they're closed, it's still kind of, you still feel that poignancy because you know what's there, at least if you were there, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I would ask Jennifer if, are those photos that she takes out on occasion as a remembrance, or is it just like they're there? I know they're there, but I don't ever want to look at them. Because when I found out there were photos of my grandpa, who, you know, I had really fond memories of, my mom, when she found out I was working on the essay, was like, oh, I'll send you the pictures of grandpa in his casket. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't open it for months. I needed to be like in the right frame of mind. And I think there was fear connected to it, and maybe fear that it would, you know, open old wounds, or just that it would be creepy, or just that I couldn't control my reaction because I knew I would have a strong reaction to them. But then I say in the essay, then when I did finally open up those photos, it was amazing to me how accurate some of my memories were of the funeral and the way he looked, and you know, what he was wearing, and the flowers, and then how some things I'd completely forgotten. And I was really glad that the photo gave me evidence and remembered for me. So.
Okay.
And
Well, go ahead.
What do you think about the new trend? It happened before COVID, but it became very prominent during COVID, of live streaming funerals. And then having recordings so that if you feel like going back and, oh, I couldn't make it to Uncle Jack's funeral, so I'm going to watch it as people go up and give their speeches for the dead and stuff. Is this like do you consider it to be kind of a modern form of memento mori, or?
Yeah. And, you know, I actually hadn't thought about that. So that's a great question. The editor at Pindust that produced Lightning Flowers as a podcast, she sent me an article in the New York Times, like shortly after Lightning Flowers ran on their podcast. And it was this about the trend of how now that we have iPhones taking photos of funerals and of the dead body up close and taking hundreds of them is like this really popular phenomenon right now. And I just think I think it more speaks to our technology, right? That the human instinct to remember our dead and to remember that we're going to die, right? Because that's what memento mori means, right? Remember, you will die too, which is such a great way to live, right? Because then you're like, I'm not going to waste anything, and I'm going to drink it all in, you know, and I'm not going to be scared, right? And I'm going to look death close enough that I'm not going to be scared. So that all that human impulse is universal, that I think has been going on through the ages. And now, just because we have different technology and we use different tools, we're expressing that differently. So I think the more technology changes, the more humans are still the same, maybe.
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
I
Because we
think,
stream everything, right? I mean, I went to a Zoom wedding during the pandemic, and a church streams services and baptisms, and they stream funerals too, which I haven't watched any streamed funerals, but I think it's just the age we live in. Yeah.
yeah, I think for me, in my family, for whatever reason, I developed a morbid sense of humor at a very young age. The first time I encountered a death in the family was, yeah, you seem to remember a lot of, of stuff there. Um, I remember I was 9 and my grandpa Case died. So we flew back. We were living in the naval base in Pacific Beach, Washington. We flew back out to Nebraska to attend his funeral. And I remember standing there with my cousins, and my great grandma was crying and my dad was hugging her and everything. I remember seeing my grandpa Case just lying in the casket, motionless. Like it was him, but it didn't something seemed off. So I reached out and grabbed his nose, and it felt waxy, it felt off. It wasn't his nose, but it was his nose. And that I was chided for doing that because I was curious. He was dead. He was gone. What does this death mean?
Mhm.
Before that, it was like the death of a cat, a pet cat, but that didn't really sink in as much as that. Um, I remember when you and I went to see Fight Club, and then we had hours of discussion afterwards. How brilliant that movie was, and there was the phrase from that movie that I need you to know that one day you will die. Before that, you are useless. Do you what are your thoughts on death being a part of life? Are we Have we in the past as a society tried to ignore that? Try to say, try to ignore that as a way to, well, we're living and we want to extend our lives, of which I'm not a fan of because those are the years I don't really want to live through. So it's I don't know what do you think that maybe we have an unhealthy fear of death right now, whereas in the past it was such a prevalent part of life. Like you had a lot of children because a lot of them probably won't survive.
Mhm. I mean,
That I just pulled out of my ass right now. So
no. I th- I think Americans are very bad at death and grieving,
mhm,
in general. I think the pandemic forced us to get better at it, because it was collective grief on a scale that I don't think we've really seen in this country in my lifetime, at least. Um, and but it's also such an individual thing. Um, yeah, and I guess for me, well, death is so sanitized in the United States, right?
yeah,
We we buy our way out of confronting it. When I think about the difference between a culture where women would learn how to prepare a dead body for burial rites, and I mean, even in the early 1900s, what my ancestors on the prairies of Nebraska would have done, there wouldn't have been embalmers before the Civil War, right? And that was just a fact of life, right? Just like you also knew how to midwife and help a woman give birth, you also knew how to attend to death. And as we've sort of outsourced that to morticians and undertakers, we're even to the point now where we're started to come back full circle, and now we want to hire up the spiritual aspect of death, and we hire death doulas. Which I think I've known several death doulas, and they do incredible, amazing work, being present and being spiritually and emotionally there, during the person's hard passage.
mhm,
And so there's hope, right? I'm like, oh, well, if we're realizing that we need death doulas, like maybe we can become more integrated. But all cultures are different. And I think, moving to South Texas, where, so I teach at a college that's a primarily Hispanic serving institution. Signs everywhere here are bilingual. At times it's easy to feel like I'm in Mexico and not in the United States because of my landscape, and the culture here is so traditionally Mexican. And so now that I've lived in Corpus for 8 years and have celebrated Dias de los Muertos, I'm understanding the brilliance of celebrating death in that way. And I touch on that in the book too, that there's a way to embrace the inevitability of it. And then there's a way to really party it up and honor your dead loved ones, which is what they do on Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah. And that is one of the reasons why I think it's very important to keep celebrating Halloween.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and not just because it's my birthday.
That too.
Well, and we've started now because my spiritual community, my church, does a formal ofrenda, because so many people in our parish grew up with that tradition in Hispanic households. And so we've started as a family tradition doing an ofrenda every October. And it's a way to celebrate our ancestors, right? And to do this amazing, like 3-tiered altar, and to pick favorite foods for our dead loved ones, and to pick the right photographs, and to get these cool skull decorations. Like, we've really, every year we've added more and more. And I was worried I was appropriating in a culture that wasn't mine. But it's like, this is for my family, right? I'm not posturing, but
yeah.
I wondered how my husband was just sort of like, yeah, whatever, you do you, I don't care. Just don't ask me to do anything. But my son, he was 5 last year, was so curious. And so what was amazing to me is, the photos came up on the ofrenda, and he's like, who's this? Who's this? And then my husband's like, well, let me tell you. And he starts launching into all of these stories about his grandparents, stories that I had never heard before. And I'm like, oh, this is why we do this. And, this is the power of stories and the power of memories, to keep people alive. So, to keep their memories and their spirit alive.
I know go ahead.
Jenny did get back to you about the photos. I show them with my kids when we pull out my albums. My reactions are no longer as teary as they were in the beginning. I didn't want to look at them for a long time.
Yeah.
So
I know what I've been doing is basically, over the past few years, I've been writing down how my funeral is going to be, at least, the wake part. I have a list. I have a playlist that does not include Amazing Grace or In the Garden, because leave those out. And if you do, everybody's getting a kazoo and playing along. And also, there's going to be somewhere a big candy bowl, either on the chest, my chest in the coffin, or somewhere.
What kind of candy?
It's going to be the big stuff, not the fun size stuff. It's got to be great. None of that Wonka stuff, none of the cheap stuff. I'm talking about, Snickers, Reese's candy, just awesome stuff.
You got to get the Godiva chocolates.
Yes, or the yeah. But
we
I love
it's going to be 9 Inch Nails, Johnny Cash.
My mother's been
puppy.
doing the same thing, and this is something interesting. My mother's in her 70s, far too young to be worrying about this right now because she's in excellent health. But one of the songs, the main song that she wants played, is by Disturbed, which might seem odd for a 70-something-year-old woman, but it's why am I suddenly?
Is it the Sound of Silence?
No, that's actually how I taught her to like Disturbed, and then it's Hold On to Memories. And when you were saying that before, the video for it is a bunch of people painting the skull faces for their loved ones to do everything, and it's just all about like hold on to all the memories that you have, because that's what you have that keeps people alive, is what you have with them. And she also wants to have she does a lot of speech to text when she's trying to like do multiple things at once. And so she wants like a sign with pictures of the worst things that her phone has ever butchered, and a taco truck.
Nice.
Is something else she wants at her funeral. So,
Nice.
well, it's celebration of life, not funeral. But and the other thing you were talking about doing customs and stuff, and with the Halloween, we do a campfire series, Owlite Stories, and or Owlite Society. I get confused. We have all these Owlite things. So much owl. But our campfires for Halloween are all about family members, because that's when you celebrate the passing and souls and the dead are closest to your earth. And when you tell the horror stories, that's for Christmas or that season, because that's when, you know, death is like reaching the point. It's just getting to where life starts over again. So you tell all of the darkest tales during the darkest part of the year, but Halloween is actually the celebration of all of your families for us. So is that something that you, is that similar to what you're doing in some things, or?
I mean, absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, I guess if you think about the seasonal rhythms of you know, things dying back in winter and then being rebirthed in spring, we as, you know, biological creatures, right? Those same sort of rhythms affect us, right? So it makes sense. And one of my dear friends who's a priest, Mother Cynthia McKenna, and I talked to her a lot for spiritual advisement when I was writing the book, with the Pancakes Are Just Pancakes essay, you know, really talking about like, what are these moments where I feel the presence of the divine, or I feel God? What's going on there? You know? And she's like, well, God's in all of creation. You're just noticing that because you're noticing nature and you're noticing creation. And so I think noticing the seasons in the same way is like a way to cue into that, that deeper spiritual meaning. And so anyways, Mother Cynthia, one day we were talking about, you know, getting ready for the Feast of All Saints Day, which falls right. I'm gonna screw up the
November 1st, maybe.
calendar. I think it's the 1st, right? And there's like another feast day that's the Sunday nearest to that or whatever. But anyway, we were talking about our preparations for that, and she goes, it feels November-ish, because she goes, the slant of light always changes this week that we have these celebrations. And I thought, oh, that's really odd. But she was so cued on to those natural rhythms of cycles, as she's like, the light has shifted, you know, and to paying attention to that, I think it's really important. So I love that you mentioned that.
So, all right. So it's been about an hour now. We should maybe start wrapping things up. This has been a great talk.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic.
Yeah,
it was great catching up with you.
This has been a blast. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I would like to ask, you had mentioned, and I put in the notes about the swag kits that you were going to send out if people send something. We're going to hop up on you again real quick, and you can show people. So guys, if you go ahead and there are links to order her book, and send her something showing that you're ordering it, this is what you will get to have.
So you get a custom book plate that I will sign and I'll personalize with a message or with your name, and then you stick that in the nameplate page. So it's like me signing the book without physically having the book. And then I made some custom stickers that are kind of Easter eggs. There's a story behind the butterfly, a story behind eating more pancakes, and some stickers. And then you'll also get a postcard, which is part of a photo essay that's connected to the first essay in the book called Driving the Section Line. So these postcards are my original photographs. And
okay.
So buy my book wherever you buy books online. I would really appreciate it. And I'd love to send you a little special gift for being an audience member here at the Clutch of Personalities.
Awesome.
And while we have you up here, where do you like people to reach you? Where are you happiest to get in contact with your fans?
Yeah. So the best way to get in touch with me is through my Substack. And I believe you put the links wherever links go. But it's Sarah K Lenz .substack.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah. The link is there.
Yeah.
It's called
Spirit down below.
Notes for the Creative Contemplative. And I really write about how the spiritual intersects with my mundane life. And I write about other essayists. I write about my life. It's a lot of personal essays. So the kind of stuff that I write about in my book is also in my newsletter. And you can read about typewriters too.
Yeah.
Oh,
there.
Nice. Yeah.
My final question, which is worse, summers in Texas or summers in Nebraska?
Oh, summers in Texas. I mean, our heat index has been 115 because it's so humid, right? The last time the outdoor temperature got below 80, I think was late May here. It just never cools off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I used to work with people from Saudi Arabia who were like, what's with your heat? Holy crap.
Well, right. Because, Saudi Arabia is dry.
Right.
Yeah. Joshua moved up from Phoenix, and I'd visited him for 1 week. Squirrel moment here, but we're at the end, so we can do it. I visited him for a week, and I would be there, and it was like during July, I went to Phoenix, Arizona, because I'm smart. It just happened to be an opportunity that was there.
Yeah.
My mother was traveling, so I could hop a flight with her and have a place in case things went weird, when you're meeting somebody. And it was like 115 degrees. And I'd go sit outside when they wouldn't be home. They'd be working or something. He lived with his mom, and I'd sit outside with the dogs, and the dogs would be playing around in the shade. And I'd have a cigarette, and it'd be like 110, 115. And it was warm, but it wasn't bad until the sun. I would suddenly notice that I was on fire. And I would look down, and it's like an inch of my toe was exposed to the sun. And I was turning into a vampire and about ready to burst into flames and just, go melting into a pile of ash. And so I was like, this is just really weird. And then, you get back to Nebraska, and you step off the flight, and then you take in one deep breath, and you get all the moisture back in your lungs and stuff. And when he came here, he'd always made fun of me. He's like, you complain about when it gets, and I do. I'm part of my family. I'm one of the paler ones, and we have this trait of like, if it hits above about 75 or so with Nebraska humidity, we're going to have a heat stroke if we go outside. It's just terrible. There's a couple of us. But he got here, and he was just like, oh, yeah, Nebraska's great. And he'd been living for all. He's like, oh, it's not that hot out. I'm going to go walk down to the Haymarket. And it's like 10 blocks from where we live. And he'd made it like 2 blocks and had to stop and rest against a tree for like 15 minutes before he could turn around and walk back home. And I was like, how's the Haymarket? I didn't make it. I had to stop just over where you can see the bus station because I couldn't do it. How do you survive here? And I'm like, I told you. You made fun of me, but I told you.
And I still try to wear as much black as I possibly can. And that's like decades of surviving through every summer. Mm-hmm. So
we hear the pale crew up top here. You've got this nice tan. You're like, I go outside. I interact with people and the sun.
The angry ball.
I wear like this big, huge sun hat and like SPF 75 slathered, and it's
right.
The UV index down here is crazy too.
Okay. So anyway, thank you very much for coming up here, Sarah.
Yes.
It's been great.
Yes.
All right.
It was awesome to have you. And if you'd like to join us sometime, we'd love to have you on one of our campfire nights to share stories, because it's not just made up stories. We tell personal stories and everything as well. So
awesome.
So,
all right.
Well, This was a blast, you guys. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm gonna like do the Zoom thing where I have to like wave when I leave the room.
Oh yeah, we do that. Oh, hang out for just a second after the show. But thank you everybody for watching and for joining us. Thanks, Jenny. It was great to have your comments up, and we will talk to you later.
Peace out.